We are beginning the third lesson on fixing flats called How Do You Fix a Flat? In the first two lessons we dealt with, so you've got a flat, in other words, a problem has come, a conflict, and then what causes them. I need to begin by a word of exclamation here, explanation, is that when I started lesson number one, I mentioned about Evelyn and I have been dealing with a conflict all that day. That's a bad way of saying that. It sounds like Evelyn and I have been having a conflict all that day, and that wasn't true at all. We've been dealing with, let's call a person of conflict. But it shows how easily conflicts can arise in our life because of driver error, because it's one of the hazards of public speaking is open your mouth and insert your foot. But anyway, I just want to clarify that in dealing with how do you fix a flat. Let's look at some different ways here. Step number one, look for the puncture. In other words, see if you can find out what went wrong, where it happened. The Bible calls this sin. I know that is not a popular word in people's vocabulary, but sin has become the great separator in our lives. Not only a separation between us and God, but also separation from each other. Jesus came, one of the main purposes was break down what is called the Wall of Hostility. In other words, our sins had separated us from God. And so Jesus came to break this down. For instance, in the book of Ephesians, the second chapter in verse 14, it says, "For he himself is our peace." In other words, peace with God, peace with each other. "For he has made both one," talking about God and mankind. "He has broken down the middle wall of separation." What he's referring to there is the sins that separated us from God. Now, sin not only separates us from God, sin also separates us from each other. And so one of the things that we need to do is look for those things that have caused the puncture, that caused the offense, and deal with that. We must learn to be what the Bible calls, Jesus used this term, peacemakers. And the word literally is a word only found once in the New Testament in the Greek language. And the word literally means a person that's made peace with God that is now making peace with others. So Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God." We've got to be careful that we don't just pass the problems off to somebody else. That's not solving the problem by just handing it off to someone else. No, learn to become a peacemaker. Now, the second step that I want to deal with is what I'm going to call be honest about driver mistakes. That's what I was doing as I began this lesson, is just being honest that, I misworded something. I certainly could have said it better than I said it. Be honest when you make a mistake and just deal with the mistake. Now, something that we ought to consider in our lives, if conflict is always following us. If conflict's always following us, then you might have a problem there. For instance, if Bill and Sue cause a problem, and then Bill and Bob cause a problem, and then Bill and Jane cause a problem, what do you think the problem might be? The problem is most likely with Bill, yes. And there are some people, that's what I mentioned a few moments ago, what I'll call a person of conflict. Have you ever noticed that some people are just unhappy and they want everybody else to be miserable with them? I'm not interested in that kind of living. There's nothing productive about that. So if you've always got conflicts always around you, then you need to be honest with yourself that it might be a driver's error, something that you're doing yourself that could be corrected. Now, the best way to deal with this is find someone you love, someone that you trust, Someone that loves you enough to tell you the truth in love about yourself. Because many times it's what we call blind spots. We just don't get it. We don't see it. We don't see the way that we are communicating with others. We're not, it's just not visible in our line of vision. And it's what medical science calls the blind spot. You can take and move your finger across your line of vision. There comes a place where you don't see your finger. It disappears. It's what we call the blind spot. We have those same things in our personalities. Many times, friends, family, you have to be careful about, who you open your life up to, because your enemies, they will tell you what's wrong with your life, but they're sure not going to speak it in love. And that'll end up just causing more offense many times. But many times your family and friends can see things that you cannot see. And they can help you become more objective about ourselves if we're willing to be that candidly honest with each other. So if we're going to fix the flat, we've got to learn to be honest with ourselves. The third thing I want to deal with is what I'm going to call get the tire fixed immediately. In other words, don't just keep putting it off. This is the way that so many people deal with conflicts. But ignoring the problem doesn't mean the problem will go away. In fact, many times what happens is the problem just continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger because we're not dealing with it, or we try to hand it off to somebody else. That is not fixing the flat. That's not dealing with the conflict in the proper way. So ignoring the problem doesn't mean that it will go away. We have to learn to deal with it. Don't just sit idle and allow the problem to grow larger and larger. No, don't do that. Doing that becomes a mistake. Good leadership will do the right things to get the organization back on track. In other words, it's impossible but that conflicts are going to arise. Jesus told us that. They're going to happen. There's going to be offenses. They're going to take place. But good leadership will help you correct the error, deal with the problem, and get moving the right direction again. Get it fixed as quickly as you can deal with the problem. The fourth thing I want to deal with here is what I'm going to call learning to control our anger and frustration. Now, I know you may be one of those persons that never gets angry. People like that make me angry, because my personality, I've had to deal with anger all of my life. And we can say it's part of our environment, part of our DNA, but the truth is, it's just part of human nature, and you've got to learn to use it properly. Someone has said, well, I just got a short fuse. Another gentleman answered and said, no, you don't have a short fuse. You've just been burning your fuse, that's all. So you've got to learn how to handle, how to control your anger, your frustration. There's basically three kinds of leaders, three kinds of people in this world. Those that hide the real truth because they're afraid of conflict. And I've seen so many people do this. They're angry, they just hold it inside. It's like a burning coal. It will explode someday at the wrong time. But they're hiding the real conflict. And then you've got those that just explode. They hurl the truth at others and cause more conflict. In other words, they'll take a little problem and turn it into a big problem. What we used to call in Arkansas turning molehills into mountains. And I've seen people that can, they can take any problem and make it bigger. But we need to be this third category, those that heal by speaking the truth in love. Now that is a key statement. The Apostle Paul says that. Learn to speak the truth in love. In other words, if you can't say it in love, it's best not to say it. just keep it to yourself, because you're only going to make the problem worse. You've got to learn to speak the truth in love, with the right attitude. Jesus did that. Jesus could be very confrontational, but yet you never question his love. I remember a gentleman some time ago that he called me, and he was talking about, he said, I know we had our disagreements. Well, that's putting it very mildly. I mean, that's putting a very good face on it, because we had had some big conflicts. And he said, but I never doubted that you loved me. Now, that's what we've got to do. We've got to learn to confront, but do it in a loving manner, so that they never question our motive is we care about you. We are interested in your welfare, what we can do to help you. There's a good verse in Proverbs 15:1 that speaks about this, when he said, a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Or when I've been counseling with people that are involved in conflicts, explosive situations, it's one of the things I always caution them. Keep your voice low. Deliberately lower the tone of your voice. Don't point your finger. Never start a sentence with you, because these are things that just cause the problem to be bigger, cause it to grow. A soft answer turns away wrath. So when you are in these conflicting situations, learn how to control yourself. Another one of the Proverbs that I think is so well said, that true strength, the strong man learns how to control his own spirit. And that's what we have to learn to do. Good leadership can do this. It takes negative situations and turns it into something that's positive, something that's productive. Now that's good leadership. When you can take the negative things of life and turn them into something that's good. It's what we're saying. If life gives you a lemon, then make lemonade. Boy, that is the way that our attitude should be in life. The fifth thing that I want to talk about in how to fix a flat is follow the manual. In other words, there are some instructions that can help you through this difficulty. You're not the first one to ever have a problem or even have this problem. There's been people before you. Seek out godly counsel. Look for people that can give you good advice and help you through it. Find someone that's gone through something similar to what you're going through, and they can help you. One of the things that you've got to deal with in dealing with what we're going to call the manufacturer's manual here is make sure you're dealing with all the facts before you begin the confrontation. Boy, that's one of the things that gets all of us in trouble, and we've all made this mistake at some time. See, in Proverbs 18:17, he said, the first one to plead his cause seems right until his neighbor comes and examines him. We have the cliche that we say there's two sides to every story. Boy, that is the truth. You think, you hear what they're saying, you think, man, this is, and then you hear the other side of the story, and suddenly you realize there's mistakes that's been made on both sides of this conflict. I think it's almost impossible that any conflict is just 100% one person. It takes two to fight, and it takes two to cause this. And so you have to get all the facts, get both sides the story before you begin trying to solve the problem, trying to fix the flat. This is a great part of the problem. A large part of conflict comes from bad communications, the way we say things, not just the words we use, but the attitude we show. They say that the majority of communication is nonverbal. It is what we call body language. And many times they think you're angry when really you're not angry at all, but you're coming across that way to them. And so this is bad communication. This is one of the reasons why when we get involved in larger conflicts, we can't work it out together. Now, if you can, it's better to work it out, but just between the two of you. If you got to bring others into it, Deuteronomy 19 and 15, he gives us a principle on this when he says, by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, the matter shall be established. Why does he say that? Because everybody has their own opinion of what happened. They see it through their own eyes. They understand it through their own experiences. And so he said, by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, every matter shall be established. This is why Jesus talked about this. How that we deal with conflict. When we're in conflict with a brother, then it's better to, if you can, solve it alone. If not, then you open it up to others. Now listen to me carefully here. If we confront without the proper facts, we usually create a bigger problem. So how do we solve this? You start off, keep the problem as small as you can. Don't make it larger. In other words, deal with the people that's involved in the conflict. And the principle I've always lived by for many years now is the one, if someone is not a part of the solution, then don't make them a part of the problem. Don't talk to the wrong people about it, because that's just gossip. You're just spreading the problem. So if possible, deal with the confrontation in private, just between yourself and the other person. If you can't solve it at this level, then this is what Jesus said in Matthew 18 and 15. If your brother sins against you, you feel that he has done you wrong, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone. Then he says, if he will not listen to you, go and talk to 1 or 2 others. Do you see? You're still keeping this confined to a very small group. There's now only 3 people that know, or at the most, 4 people that know about it. But the problem is, the more people that know about the problem, the more likely people are going to begin to talk about the problem. And talking to others only spreads it, only makes it go viral, was one of the words we use today. Everybody soon is talking about it. And this is a mistake, because now we have transitioned from talking about the problem, we're talking about the person. That is a mistake. Talk about the problem, not the person. If you're not able to solve it at that point, that is when Jesus said, bring it before the leadership of the church, and they will help you to resolve the conflict. Now notice this. When it's only after you failed and you're not able to resolve the conflict that you involve others. And what you need to do is only ask those people that are respected by both persons involved in the conflict. Don't bring your friends in. Bring in someone that's a neutral referee here to give you some wise counsel. Someone that's mutually respected, to ask them for their help. Now, I've got to point this out because so many people fail at this point. At this point, the conflict moves out of your hands. You just gave it to someone else. And what you are saying at this point is, we cannot solve this problem. So we are submitting it to you, and whatever decision you make, we will accept your decision. If you're not willing to do that, then don't go through the pretense. Well, I've been involved so many times. People come and want counsel. They want my advice. And they didn't want my advice. They wanted my approval for what they were doing, because the very moment that I suggested you ought to do something else, boy, they reject me and my solution, and now suddenly I become a part of the problem. Oh, that's the danger of being a counselor. But it's something I must caution you. If you invite someone else to listen and be an arbitrator, a mediator to solve a problem, at that point it's out of your hands. You just gave it to them and you said, we will accept your decision. Now, if either party continues to resist the decision that is made, the best solution at this point is just to dissolve the relationship. Now, I know that sounds harsh, but the truth is you can't continue on just fighting and live a productive life. You've got to put some kind of breather space there so that you can go back to productive living again. And so if you've got people that all they want to do is insist on fighting, the best thing to do is step back away from that relationship. Give yourself some space, because if you don't, they're going to continually keep you involved in conflict. The prophet Amos said it this way in Amos 3:3. Can two walk together unless they are agreed? We know they cannot. And if they're continually fighting with each other, they're never going to live a productive life. And so let me close by just giving you some thoughts here on what I'm going to call fixing flats without destroying the journey. Here's the way that we do it. And I'm going to give the opposites of constructive and destructive type leadership. Two different styles of management. Constructive leadership, we agree on the time and place to talk it out. Destructive leadership, we catch the other person off guard. Constructive leadership, we honestly express our feelings with love. Destructive leadership, we passively suppress your emotions. Constructive leadership, we focus on the problem, not the person. Destructive leadership, we accuse and attack the person. You see the opposites here? In constructive leadership, we select a neutral referee. That's very important. Someone that you mutually respect here. Destructive leadership is you select your friends to referee. Now, let me say this about marital conflict. It's one of the problems of taking your marriage problems home to mama. Who do you think she's going to side with? Of course, she's your mama. And it's unfair to bring her into that. Oh, I got to get away from that. But I hope you understand. If you really want marriage counseling, go someone outside your family to get it. Selecting your friends is just trying to build your case. Okay, constructive leadership, you develop a positive attitude. We can work through this. We can find a good solution to it. Destructive leadership becomes negative and vindictive. In other words, now it's not just enough that they have a problem with that person. They want you to have a problem with that person as well. Constructive leadership focuses on specifics and simplifies the problem. They don't magnify it and make it bigger, in other words. Destructive leadership generalizes and exaggerates the problem. They always speaking in these superlative adjectives. You never tell the truth. You're always late. Whatever it is. That's not good leadership. That is not fixing the flat. Another one is constructive leadership. Be open and available in communication. Destructive leadership, you become silent and superior. Oh, I hope you can see the difference between the two different styles here. Here's another one. Constructive leadership, you affirm your own responsibility. And we all have a responsibility in every conflict. We have a part in that. Affirm that and say, I could have done this better, or I should not have done that. Or destructive leadership, you blame others for the problem. You are the problem. That will not fix the flat. Here's another one. Constructive leadership, when problems arise, you work them out. Destructive leadership, when problems arise, you walk out. You don't solve it. Well, I hope I'm making this very clear for you. Here's another one. Constructive leadership, you learn to wait and listen to others. God gave us 2 ears, 1 mouth. Use them proportionately. Destructive leadership, presume, assume, and dominate. You're not going to fix the flat that way. Constructive leadership, you learn to forgive and forget. Don't bring it up again. Destructive leadership, you stubbornly demand guarantees. That is not the way that you're going to fix the flat. Now, let me close with this verse of Scripture. In the book of James, the 3rd chapter, in verse 18, the apostle, pastor of the church in Jerusalem, a half-brother of Jesus Christ, says, "Now the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace." I want to become a peacemaker, not a troublemaker. I want to become a peacemaker. And here the apostle is telling us we can do it. But the way that it is done, the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace by those that make peace. If we find peace between ourselves and God, it puts us in a position to becoming peacemakers with others. I pray that you have learned some things in these lessons on fixing flats, how to deal with the conflicts of life, how that we can become peacemakers.